Hey everyone, just a quick note before we dive in. This episode is AI generated based on an article called From Open Gym to Generational Change, Cameron Hill's Vision for Greenville's Youth, written by me, Tim Harrison. If you want to check out the full article, the link is right there in the show notes. All right, give it a couple seconds and let's get into it. So I got something really special for you today on Kingdom Factor Collective. We're talking about a story out of Greenville, South Carolina that honestly, it just stopped me in my tracks when I first came across it. Cooper, you've been digging into this. Tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, so this is the story of Lead Collective Inc. and its executive director, Cameron Hill. And the thing is, it didn't start as some big, polished nonprofit strategy. It started with a guy named Ryan McCrary back in 2009, doing something really simple. He just started taking middle and high school students from an under-resourced neighborhood in Greenville on outdoor adventures like rafting, rock climbing, literally getting kids into creation.
Oh, interesting. And that was the beginning of all of this?
Exactly. That ministry was called GOAT, Great Outdoor Adventure Trips. Ryan started partnering with boys and girls clubs, group homes, community centers, really anyone working with at-risk youth. And it grew quietly through relationships. No press releases, no big launch events, just showing up.
So where does Cameron come in?
So Cameron and his wife arrived in Greenville with this conviction around asset-based community development. And the core idea is you don't move into a neighborhood and ask what's broken. You ask what God is already doing here and how can we join it? And they chose a neighborhood called Nickeltown. That was 13 years ago, and they're still there.
13 years. That's serious commitment. So what did they actually start doing?
So after 3 years of just listening and learning alongside their neighbors, Cameron wanted to start something for the youth in the area. And this is what I love. It wasn't grand at all. It was just an open gym basketball program. He didn't want to start a nonprofit. He didn't want to go full time. He just called Ryan at GOAT and said, "Can we operate under your umbrella?" And Ryan said yes. And that's how Elios was born. Elios being the Greek word for mercy.
So it was really that informal at the start.
Completely. And then you know how it goes. One thing led to another. The open gym became a leadership program. The leadership program started as dinners around Cameron and his wife's kitchen table, just a handful of students talking about leading at school, at home, in the neighborhood. Then it became a year-long cohort, then a tutoring program that evolved into a full after-school facility. And suddenly, Elios was something no one had actually planned for.
Wow. So at what point did Lead Collective actually become its own thing?
So the board at GOAT eventually said, look, we really think we need a separate umbrella organization that can oversee both GOAT and Elios to properly steward what we have. So in 2020, Cameron stepped away from his role as a pastor and became the executive director of Lead Collective, this new umbrella org. And then a year later, a third ministry launched under that same roof called REACH, which works specifically with justice-involved youth. Students on probation, students at the local juvenile detention facility, prevention, intervention, reconciliation. So now you've got three ministries under one vision. What does that vision actually look like? Cameron describes it as high and lofty, deliberately. The mission is for middle and high school students from historically under-resourced neighborhoods in Greenville to experience the love of Jesus, escape poverty, and flourish for generations to come. And they define poverty in a fourfold way: broken relationship with God, with self, with neighbor, and with the world. Flourishing is the reconciliation of all four. And the three ministries each hit a different piece of that. GOAT gets students outdoors, disconnected from their phones, confronted with beauty and challenge. Elios does deep, neighborhood-rooted discipleship in Nickeltown, and REACH walks alongside students who've made choices with serious consequences.
That's really holistic. And I imagine leading something like this isn't easy. What does Cameron say about that side of it?
He's really honest about it. He talks about becoming acutely aware of everything that's out of his control. And he's specific. He wants students to connect with God, to believe they're loved, to have that change how they see themselves in the world around them. And he says, I can't control any of that. But the flip side, and this is the really beautiful part, the flip side of losing control is watching God work. He's seen checks arrive in the mail from strangers, covering payroll shortfalls. He's watched students who grew up in the program come back as staff, pouring into kids from their same streets. And he says the deepest fruit is still yet to be seen because it's the fruit that's going to show up in the lives of their children and their children's children.
Oh, that's powerful. Generational impact right there in the name of this episode. So, what is Lead Collective actually believing God for right now?
Cameron doesn't give a vague answer here. He prays specifically. At the broad level, he's asking God for a move of renewal across Greenville, something that awakens hearts to economic injustice and the brokenness of the juvenile justice system. And then at the ground level, he's praying for transformed hearts in the students every single day. And then there's this very specific thing he's believing for: 30 men to volunteer as mentors inside the juvenile detention facility. It's an all-male facility, and he believes Christian men have a particular call to go invest there. He said, I know those young men need that, so we're believing God for 30 men to walk through those doors.
That's a really concrete ask. I love that. What about the business leaders and entrepreneurs in our Kingdom Factor Collective audience? What does Cameron have to say to them?
So this is where it gets really good, because it's not your typical nonprofit pitch for volunteers and dollars. He references this quote. He can't quite pin down the source, but it's, "Don't tell people how to build a boat. Make them long for the ocean. The boat will follow." And his challenge is inspire people with a kingdom vision that's worth pursuing, and don't be ashamed of it. If the vision seems too big and too grand, it's probably of heaven. Don't reduce it to make it man-sized.
Don't make it man-sized. Yeah, that's a phrase that's going to stick with me.
And then the second part of his counsel is humility. Leave your ego at the door. Be willing to say, here's where I want to go, and I don't know how to get there. Cameron credits so much of Lead Collective's growth to this posture. He's had countless coffees and lunches where he just said, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me? And experienced leaders, people with decades of wisdom, showed up, eager to give it. He even specifically calls out people who may be stepping back from their primary careers but still want to make a contribution. He says they want to be invited in. Find a way to invite them.
It's the same principle that built the whole thing, right? Don't try to do it alone. Ask who God has already placed around you, invite them in, and hold your hands open.
Exactly. That's really the whole thread. From Ryan taking kids rafting in 2009 to an open gym to kitchen table dinners to 3 ministries under one roof. None of it was engineered. It was just faithful people asking the right question. What is God already doing here, and how do we join it?
That is such a good word to close on. All right, everyone, that's a wrap on this episode of Kingdom Factor Collective. If you want to read the full article, From Open Gym to Generational Change, Cameron Hill's Vision for Greenville's Youth, the link is right there in the show notes. And remember, this was an AI-generated episode, so go check out the original piece if you want to go deeper. We'll see you next time.